Another Wednesday, which means I'm doing another conversation video. But before we get to that, yes, I know this, I'm changed my outfit. It's getting a bit chilly outside for my other coat, so I decided to change my outfit. But I'm here again with Leaf, and we are again talking about Vampire the Masquerade. I think this time we're going even into the actual lore of the game instead of just the mechanics like the previous one.
Welcome, heroes and villains, to Fajuk Enterprises YouTube channel. Take a moment, relax, stop your bickering, and just enjoy the show.
From what I remember from the one time I played the game and the few rule books I've read, I know that the not the Malkavians and most of the other clans are descendants of the biblical Cain. But are all
Yeah.
the vampires in Vampire the Masquerade Canaanites?
No, so there's two groups. There's the Canaanite vampires, which includes all the essentially all the vampires from Europe, but also includes the vampires from Africa. The I'm probably pronouncing it completely wrong, but the Liban or Liban, they're African. They're an African branch. There is the again I'm probably pronouncing this completely wrong. But there's the Kyujin or K. They're the Kyujin. They're again, I'm probably butchering that. Because the K is probably a Q. But they're from the vampires from Asia, and they are not descended from Cain at all. They have a completely different origin.
With the curse of Cain, the biblical Cain, does that mean the Christian God is also canon to the world of darkness setting?
Yes. Yeah. The biblical God is definitely canon for World of Darkness. In fact, it is pretty much most of the events of the Bible have also been canonized through essentially Demon the Fallen, which is another one of the titles. Where it's so in within the canon, it's a big, what is God, what is not God. No, God is definitely canon in the World of Darkness.
I don't know if I've mentioned that I actually own one of the old clan books for the Malkavians because the I don't know why, but at the time the madness intrigued me. But I've seen a lot of forums on the internet. Everyone plays Malkavians wrong, the madness wrong. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, okay, so it's really hard to play like a mad character, insane character, um, properly because a lot of times there's a lot of like insane people have a certain perspective that sane people don't have, right? So the Malkavians are very much a clan that has that madness that allows them to see past the fourth wall. So past the fourth wall, seeing the future, do all sorts of stuff. So it's really hard for like a normal person to play that without it the Malkavian coming off like cartoonish. So from what I understand, a lot of people that have played Malkavians, they play them almost like a default like Joker, or like like your basic insane comic book villain, right? And that's like you can play it that way because again, like there's like as long as you're not negatively impacting everyone else at your table, there's no real wrong way to play. Um, but it's definitely like very like one dimensional. And there's definitely a lot of like ableism in the playing of a lot of Malkavians. Um, so yeah, in a way, there is a lot of there a lot of people are playing them very one note, like playing them like hey, I'm just gonna play a vampire version of the Joker, and and that was a one. First of all, I this is a hot take, but that was a horrible movie, horrible movie. But yeah, no, I would agree. It's maybe not with the word wrong, but just with instead like they're playing it one note, one dimensionally, and maybe with some like ableist um uh tropes.
I haven't played much World of Darkness, but at, I'm sure you know that even games that you haven't played a lot, there's still a few scenes that stick out in your memory. The one scene that sticks out of my memory from playing World of Darkness is a Bruja, I think I'm saying that right, picking a fight
Yeah.
with a bouncer who turned out to be a werewolf. Is that common of the Bruja clan?
Yeah. Okay. So talking about playing clans one dimensionally. The Brujah are typically played as dumb idiots, but literally that's their thing. Like if you look at their bio, it's like with the Brujah, it's they themselves have the clan themselves have trapped themselves as being one dimensional, and that being the dumb strong meathead. That's just the bouncer. That's just brute strength. That's how the clan itself pretty much looks at themselves. Which is you can do all sorts of meta commentary about that. And tables have they've done like I'm sure they've done a sort of meta commentary how like essentially like the Bruja as entire clan have like this insecurity about themselves that they think that the only thing they're worth is being meaty meatheads and that meat right so like yeah that's like a Bruja would walk up to a bouncer and then find out, oh hey, they're a werewolf. I'm still gonna take this werewolf with this werewolf because I can, right? No, that's yeah.
So what's the difference between the Camarel, the Sabbat, and the Anarchists?
Okay, so this is going into a little bit of history. Okay, so um way back in the lore, like I think the early medieval era, like you can use all whatever archaeological words, historical words, but essentially it was like post fall of the Roman Empire. Oh hey, there we go. So everyone that's watching this, if you're a guy, congratulations, you now think about the Roman Empire. Sorry, I just had to put that meme in there. Anyways, so post the Roman Empire, or maybe even before that, I'm a little hazy on the history details, but the vampires got together and realized there are too many humans. And if the humans all got together, there'd be enough humans that they could actually kill all the vampires. So a group of them got together and started making, essentially formed like the Camarilla as like a survival organization so that they could continue to rule humanity from the shadows, and continue to thrive and prosper. And then somewhere along the way, because it's an undead society, there is no zero upward movement in like think of the most like corrupt corporate structure you can with like there being all the middle management and upper management is filled by like these old fogies that refuse to die and therefore vacate their position so that there can be some upward movement. It's like that, but instead of just having to, hey, we can wait until they die in like 20 years. No, they'll never die. Like all the seats of power are held by elders and will always be held by others. So all the younger generation of vampires got really pissed off at this. And they wanted their freedom and they wanted a shot at power, so they formed the Anarch movement. And which essentially was a move to completely dismantle vampire society as a whole, so that you can redistribute the power to the young and up and coming vampires. They lost, so the Camarilla won that war, and from the remains of that, you have a bunch of like anarchist vampires running around, and they're the Anarchy. And then you have also the Sabbat. So the Sabbat also they originally were part of the Anarchs, but now they have crystallized into their own faction. And like the biggest faction, or sorry, the biggest difference between the two factions would be the Camarilla. They hold on to some small fraction of the humanity, in codes of ethics and morality, so that they can essentially not fall to the curse of Cain and become just mindless pits of eternal hunger. The Sabbat, on their hand, have decided, what, we're monsters, so we're gonna behave like it. So they are monsters. Also, the Camarilla bases their entire organization essentially off of feudalism. And the Sabbat bases entirely off of the Catholic Church. So all their ranks, like for instance, in a Camarilla city, they're ruled by a prince. In a Sabbat city, they're ruled by a bishop. So there's a lot of rituals and traditions and customs within Sabbat that are essentially legitimately Catholic traditions and customs and rituals that have been perverted for Sabbat's needs. Like it's a dark, twisted version of Catholicism in a group of immortal beings that believe that they are monsters and are thus doomed, so we'll behave it like it. The Anarchs by comparison, they're just Anarchs that also happen to be vampires. So it's really hard to put pin it down what the anarchs are because they're anarchs, right? So they have no real larger global organization. They're just small little groups scattered all throughout the world, mainly Europe and North America. If vampires show up in Asia, they tend to get beat up by Asian shape changers or the Asian vampires. And
The, from what I remember from reading Vampire the Masquerade rulebook, watching live plays, and just reading stories on Reddit, most stories focus the characters of being part of Camarel. Is that
yeah,
because the Sabbat are monsters, or is there another reason for that?
no, it's very much because the Sabbat are vampires. Or monsters. Yeah, it's okay. So like it's in a lot of the writing of the fluff, the lore, the splat, whatever you want to call it. The spat is kind of presented as a bit of a one note because they are like we are monsters, so we're gonna behave it right. So there's subtlety to them, but a lot of times there's not, and a lot of times they're used primarily as the antagonists, as the main line is focused around the Camarilla. Like the writers have made that conscious choice to base it around to base the whole story around the Camarilla, because again the Camarilla has it's like it's Byzantine, like literally Byzantine in its policies, in its interactions between princes, even within the actual single domain of a prince. It's very Byzantine in organization. You can have all sorts of like political structures and political intrigue and fights that are like political fights, but that involve no bloodshed because in the spat, eventually any power play is going to end up in bloodshed. It 100% every time will. In the Camarilla, they're civilized enough that you can actually win a fight without actually resorting to violence. It's just, because you have better cars, better resources, and there's that showdown moment, and then the other side concedes, right? So you can have all that political maneuvering, cultural growth, to exploration of, character and stuff. Because again, the Camarilla vampires maintain their humanity to some level. So you can have stories like, literally, of like a Romeo and Juliet thing where one character is a vampire and one character is a human. In a Sabbat, you can never have that. You can never have that complexity because the human with Sabbat vampire would never look at a human other than food. In the Camarilla, they very much can. So there's more depth. So because there's more depth of storytelling you can actually do with the Camarilla. I'm sure there's going to be someone that disagrees and says there's just as much depth with the Sabbat. I don't agree with that. But again, I'm not the arbiter of every table, right? So every table can make their own choices, and I'm sure some tables have great stories about Sabbat, but most of the game is focused on the Camarilla.
Other clans in the Sabbat that aren't in the Camarel and vice versa?
No. Okay, so there are two clans that are primarily associated with Sabbat, and that's the Los Imbara, and again probably pronouncing that wrong, and the Zazmichi, which probably also pronouncing that wrong. Those are the primary two clans of the Sabbat. They're the founders. There are members of all the other clans in as well, and they're known as again probably pronounce this wrong, Attribrew. They're kind of like rebels, right? But at the same time, you can find the same Attribrew. Again, sorry for I'm probably butchering that word. But you can find this Lasambaro and Zamichi also in the Camarilla. But they're like rebels, right? For whatever reason they don't agree with the greater organization for whatever reason, or like for like the Sabbat ones, they may have actually failed in a power play, and so they're fleeing the Sabbat and finding sanctuary in the Camarilla, and the Camarilla will let them in, going because excellent. You're coming us to help. Excellent. That is so wise and wise of you to understand this. And we, being the Camarilla, are going to show your generosity and compassion by allowing you in. You'll just have to endure several centuries of gloating.
That answers my question if vampires ever cross factions as well.
Oh yeah, no, all the time. Like yeah, it's some clans more with some clans and some clans others. Some clans are more independent, some clans are more solidified. But yeah, there's always going to be rebels with any clan that will cross factions. Yeah, and then yeah.
By the sounds of it, the Sabbat and Camarilla are very both politically driven factions. So, and with the game being basically about vampire politics, is there any reason to play an anarchist game?
Yeah, for the same reason for the same reason that anarchy exists, right? As a political stance. as like the anarchists are literally free. They don't answer. They believe they don't answer to anyone. Right. So the play in anarchist is literally to play that wild card in a party. In Sabat, you're probably gonna get eaten at some point. Because again, the Sabat literally eat other vampires. The Camarilla, you're not supposed to. That's against one of their laws. But playing an anarch and a Camarilla, you're playing a wild card, right? You're playing like the pretty much the ultimate wild card who bucks tradition, who says a giant up yours, right? Put it where the sun don't shine, right? Fuck you, So you're playing that source of that anarchy that's there to disrupt the status quo. So you can have a single individual anarch playing in your little circle or your pack. Which, sorry, top of my head, but anyway, so you can play that, a single one in that group, or you can play a whole group of them that have somehow been tolerated in Camarilla territory, because the Camarilla princes typically will tolerate a certain level of an anarch population, because, like, the princes, like, again, because the Camarilla is so very political, they believe ultimately in the power of the Camarilla, and so it's like, yeah, sure, we'll allow some of these anarchs here, so we'll show them how superior and civilized we are, and how our power structures are the correct power structures, so we'll turn them over to our side. Because what's the best way to defeat an enemy is to make your enemy your friend or your servant, right? It's the whole idea of, like, you can see this in multiple movies and historical, like, there's a rebel who has been, who's, rebelling against oppression, right? And that the source of that oppression was sent to recruit the rebel, going, well, you know what? If you think you can do so well, we're just going to put you in charge of this province. And then the rebel suddenly becomes part of the oppression, right?
I don't think this has come up in a past interview, but it's called Vampire the Masquerade. What is the Masquerade?
Okay, so the Camarilla has a set of rules. It's essentially rules that essentially governs the Camarilla. Things like thou shalt not kill another vampire. Because the only one that can call blood hunt is a prince. There's one that essentially says you should be ruled by a prince. And then there's one about the masquerade. Essentially, you shall not expose vampire society to humans. You shall maintain the masquerade that we don't exist. So that's the reference, is that there's literally a law among the Camarilla that you're not supposed to expose the existence of vampires to normal humans. Because typically what happens with normal humans, if they find out vampires, they either scream to the night or they start, picking up pitchforks and torches and stakes. Which is the whole reason why the Camarilla exists, is to hide vampires. So that's the reference to the Masquerade.
So, why is the other game called Vampire the Requiem then?
Okay, so that's New World of Darkness. They essentially they wanted to differentiate the two. So the Requiem, they have Vampire Society operates a little or a lot differently in Vampire the Requiem and essentially Chronicles of Darkness, because there's World of Darkness and Chronicles of Darkness. So it operates a little differently in the Chronicles of Darkness. The particulars of it, I don't really know, because I'm not really big on Chronicles of Darkness. Like World of Darkness, that's my game. That's my jam. So I stuck with that. So I'm really vague on a lot of the details of Chronicles of Darkness.
In my research for this interview, I came across high clans and low clans. I'm guessing, by the sounds of it, high clans are the ones that have the princes in the Camarilla. But what's the difference between high clans and low clans?
So the Camarilla is literally a feudal system. So because of that, they have their nobles and they have their lowborns. So the high clans are those clans that recruit almost exclusively from the noble caste, so like the Ventru, the Tremere, the Torador, and I think that's the three noble clans. There might be another, and the rest of them essentially they recruit from like the peasant folks, the plebeians, right, the lessers, right. So that within the vampire society, there is the high clans and the low clans, because it's not so much a big thing in the modern knights. But like if you're playing Vampire the Masquerade in the medieval ages, it's a very big thing.
Speaking of clans, I know that you've won Vampire the Masquerade a number of times in the past. Is there any clan that you find really cool and nifty that no one's played yet?
Well, that's a thinker right there. I played Malkavian once. That was challenging to try to not to fall into like that I'm just gonna play a Joker. But I think let's see I've had a Bruja, I've had a Sasmite, I've had a Losamambara, again probably butchering that name, Corridor. Yeah, I've had pretty much every clan of the Camarilla ones played. Um, Personally myself, I'm kind of a fan of like the Gangrel. They're pretty cool. And also the Nosferatu. The idea of the Nosferatu essentially of being a clan that was once originally like the founder of the Nosferatu was a beautiful man. Like we're talking like could stop traffic beauty, and all his child were the same way, and they got so vain because of that. Cain decided, you know what? You're too arrogant. You're too vain. I'm gonna curse you with ugly. And boy, is it ugly. it's like they got hit with a whole ugly stick. So they've essentially kind of like within any domain of there's going to be a subdomain of just Nosferatu that live in the sewers and the abandoned places, and they have like their own unified subculture and they're information brokers. But at the same time, they are absolute beasts in combat because they have potence as one of their powers, which is a strength modifier. So just that idea of the Nosferatu, I find that kind of appealing and kind of interesting. And the game rule, the whole thing of like a feral vampire that's not feral, because they're a lot more calm than a lot of people think, and so there's layers to them. The Ventru, that they're again, they're like they're top of the clan. Even amongst the high clans, they're the top because they're Ventru, right? But yeah, so I think I kind of wandered off your question a little bit. But yeah, so anyway, so those are the clans that I find nifty. Yeah.
As you're aware,
Mhm.
I finish my interviews with always the same way. Anything and anyone you want to shout out, and or tell them you know where they live.
Well, I've already done that a couple times, so I've already, I probably shouldn't mention where I know where he lives, and I have multiple, heavy objects. And I know how to swing them. No, I guess just like yeah, I guess just a shout out to all my crews that have done, played all my, mixed nut games, and have decided, hey, we're gonna play like things that don't match, and we're gonna play them all together at one time, and we're gonna see how that hits. So yeah, just a shout out to all my old players, old and young, all of you. You're all, wonderful, wonderful people that sometimes I've wanted to do horrible violence to.
I am envious of all those people. Um, all my social media and my email is in the description. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next video.